Where will Mike Vrabel be headed? There's the Ohio State aspect. Of course, that's his alma mater. Big part of his storyline. He's coached there as well under Urban Meyer, who apparently didn't know him, which is a funny story that he told with Bus with the Boys, I believe. Is that where he was? Manningcast. That's right.
Yeah,
Manningcast.
Yeah.
So Vrabel's available. We all thought he was going to get a job last offseason after he was fired by Amy Adams-Strunk here with the Titans in Nashville. That didn't happen. He's been with the Cleveland Browns as like an assistant, not on the field, just more of someone to bounce ideas off of. And he wants to coach. He wants to coach ball. That's the way he would describe it. Doesn't want to do the ins and outs of the daily business grind that is, well, college football and the NFL. And that's why whenever the news was out that he wants to be the Bill Belichick model, where he wants to be the general manager and the head coach, I don't think he wants to be the general manager in the sense of the day-to-day operations and the business side of what is the NFL and an organization, what it takes. I do think he wants to work and choose his general manager. I don't think he wants to do it at the college level personally because of the recruiting and, again, just the everything but coaching football. You can't. It's hard to do that nowadays. That's why Chip Kelly is an offensive coordinator instead of a head coach at UCLA.
And an offensive coordinator probably doesn't even recruit.
But that's right. But who's he going to? Ohio State could be open. I mean, is it national championship or bust for Ryan Day? There are jobs open right now in the NFL that they could go ahead and talk to him if they want to.
Yeah, Albert Breer of Sports Illustrated is reporting that he is the top option for Chicago.
Okay.
So when Dan Orlovsky said, I think he's already spoken for.
Well, but Orlovsky, this is what piqued interest here, because I think everyone is taking what Orlovsky said on the Pat McAfee show and tied it into Ohio State because of Vrabel's ties to the Buckeyes.
Who do you think about for that particular situation? Vrabel's still out there.
Yes.
Vrabel's still out there. Bill Belichick has an opt-out of a deal.
I think Vrabel's spoken for.
Oh.
What do you mean?
What's that mean?
Married? He is married, right?
He is married.
I think he's married, yeah.
Spoken for how?
What do you mean?
Where?
I just think that
Break it.
I just think that Vrabel's probably got a very clear sight and path with where he is going to be likely coaching.
Where?
College or pro?
Say it.
He's saying Ohio State.
He'll be coaching football.
Pro or college?
I just.
So we wouldn't have thought college,
I'm not a
right?
reporter.
The answer is so
I'm
it's
not
college.
a reporter.
O-H-I-O. Is that what you're saying?
I think that there's a vision for where he kind of likely ends up coaching next year.
Okay, Dan.
I'm not a reporter.
Didn't know.
Dan,
reporter.
you are.
You're acting
Listen,
like
I've come on your show before and I said I've heard something and it got me in a lot of trouble, so I'm trying not to do that.
Yeah, just don't delete any tweets. Ladies and gentlemen, living legend, absolute stud. You were right about that. Dan Orlovsky.
Yeah, Dano.
So Dano said
He's got some inside info.
he's got ears to the ground.
Yeah. Plugged in.
Ryan Day, is that what he just said?
Ryan
right there?
Day,
Yeah.
bye-bye.
Ryan Day, bye-bye. They were discussing Ohio State before that clip started. I don't think it's Ohio State. Breer is saying
The Bears.
Chicago.
The Bears.
I can tell you that the New Orleans Saints have been calling around asking about Mike Vrabel, doing their due diligence in the vetting process, getting that underway. There are
How about the Raiders with Brady?
there are ties to the Raiders, and we've mentioned Vrabel there. The Bears.
I don't know that a lot of people that were talking about the Brady connection with Vrabel as a possible coaching option with his ties to the Raiders, because he's going to have a big say in the next coach.
Well,
And that makes a ton of sense if they're trying to
And
start things over in Brady's image of what the Raiders are going to be as a winning organization. I feel like his buddy Mike Vrabel would make a ton of sense to be the head coach.
And last year there was a lot of talk about Vrabel and the Raiders before they decided to keep Antonio Pierce around, because he did a nice job. The locker room really liked him after the interim tag was placed on him. There's Doug Peterson and what's going to happen eventually in Jacksonville. Are they going to do a full house cleaning there? And if so, is that the model that Vrabel wants to put together? It's the model that the Titans chose not to do, which is have a general manager, but more or less he's making some picks, right? He's making some calls, but not the day-to-day operations. He pitched all this. He wanted more power. He didn't get it and lost out in a battle of who the general manager was going to be. A year later, he's fired. He's not going to just go anywhere. Cincinnati has been thrown out there. Cincinnati, if they choose to make a change, they're known for being a cheap organization. They're going to hire young if Zach Taylor isn't the head coach for the Bengals. I think Zach Taylor, has not met expectations with a quarterback that is playing at an MVP level. But again, probably gets another year because of how the Bengals spend or don't spend. The Bears, though, intriguing, Chad, because of Caleb Williams. But Chicago doesn't need, I don't think, this visionary offensive coordinator coming in to call plays for the first time and, be a head coach for the first time while calling plays, which I think is extremely difficult. But known for his offense. That would be Ben Johnson. If I'm Chicago, I want a coach who has been there before. I know I'm not big on retreads just for the sake of this, but I think that team needs that. They're very outspoken in the media. There's a lot of chirping going on, talking about what coaching decisions made the day before or the day after a game. Caleb Williams is Caleb Williams. That turmoil, eventually, it comes to the surface level. Vrabel won't have any of that. I think that does that team some good and can galvanize a team within a locker room. That's what he did when he took the job with the Titans. And he also took over a team that had Marcus Mariota. They make the change to Ryan Tannehill, and they take off. At the time, they didn't go through Derrick Henry. All of a sudden, they did, and they take off. And their defense improved to a point where they made it to the AFC Championship game. Chad, Chicago makes sense. I think the Saints don't, because you don't have that same type of need. I think you've got to have, especially with a veteran quarterback, it's a different vibe in New Orleans. Although New Orleans it seems like they're highly after someone like Mike Vrabel. He's going to get a job, any job that he wants, and he's taking his time. But I can tell you right now, he doesn't want to go door-to-door recruiting. He doesn't want to be involved in having to negotiate anything or dealing with the entire list of reasons why we never thought Bill Belichick would go to college and coach college ball. Like, how's he going to do in recruiting? How's he going to deal with a player that comes back and says, I want $150,000 more? And we see what Brady and Gronkowski, what they were saying on Fox. The same goes for Mike Vrabel. He's not going to put up with it, and he has a choice not to. In Chicago, he may not have to because they're going to give him the structure that he wants if they're going directly after Vrabel as their number one choice, as Breer reports.
Yeah, and the structure that he wants is very much a best of all worlds scenario for a head coach. Because essentially what you're saying, Hutton, is he doesn't want to do the job of the general manager, which is the negotiations and the salary cap work and scouting every player and all that. What he wants is veto power.
Here's a great example.
He wants the ability to be the coach that says, nope, we're not drafting this guy. We're drafting this guy because I'm passionate about it. Or we're not going to sign this guy. Or I'm willing to overspend on this free agent because I know he fits what I want to do. That's what he wants. He wants someone who thinks like him as the GM, and someone that ultimately, if there is a disagreement, the tie is always going to go to the head coach in Mike Vrabel. That's the power that he wants.
And
which every coach would want. If they're good enough to get it, great.
Yeah, if you could, yes. If you've been there and done that and you have the ability to get that in a do it.
Yeah.
Here's the example. It's beyond just like recruiting or having to negotiate, doing the handshaking, whatever it might be. On Tuesdays, NFL teams have tryouts. Injured players you sign players to practice squad. You try out kickers, whatever. The general manager and the player pro personnel director, they're the ones flying in those players from around the country to try out for said team. But if you're trying out a defensive tackle, you need an offensive lineman there too. And if you're trying out a kicker, you need a long snapper and a holder. He doesn't want to deal with that.
No.
He wants to show up and evaluate. That's what we're talking about here. And if you don't want to deal with that aspect, you don't want to deal with college football, do you? Although, maybe you do now, because if he's like Belichick, college football is a lot like
well,
that.
And if you're going to make this move, if you're the Bears, first off, the Bears are in need of an enema. So anything like this, I think, would be great if they hired the right person, because they kind of need a top-down reevaluation of that organization.
It's about
and
to get
what's
crazier
going
too.
on. Yeah, but you're hiring Vrabel first, and Vrabel's picking his GM. That's the way I see this structure working.
Well, Kevin
best.
Warren is there as the president. Kevin Warren is the one involved in the hiring process, right? And here's the other aspect of the Bears organization, which I believe we've hit on before. Virginia McCaskey is the owner. She's not controlling. She's 103 years old, and the family has many. Can you quickly look up how many kids are in the McCaskey family? We know the lineage of the Chicago Bears, but there are many of the children who are into football, many who are not. They're trying to figure out if they're getting a stadium. They're acquiring land. They're not. Are they going to stay at Soldier Field? There's a lot of moving parts to the Chicago Bears right now. 11 children.
She's 101 years old.
101. 11 children is right. Yeah. So, I mean,
Yep, 11, including Michael and George McCaskey.
Yeah.
11 children.
And some of them are helping with the team. Some are not. Some are the controlling owner. Again, there's a lot of moving parts to them that I think kind of gets crazier in the near future. And do you want to deal with that? Maybe you do, maybe you don't. Chad, the real question is Caleb Williams. Beyond just the team and the locker room, Caleb Williams and his makeup compared to Mike Vrabel is oil and water.
He is not a Vrabel guy.
Oil and water. The paint the fingernails and sulking on the sideline, body language on the bench from this past week. That's not Mike Vrabel's mentality at all. And he won't hide his feelings about it either. He's blunt. He's honest. He's the same guy every day. He's an alpha. Straight alpha. Even in a room of alphas.
Yeah.
And that irritates players along the way, but initially it galvanizes a locker room. You follow that guy until you're just tired of him being the same guy all the time.
Well, Vrabel, I think, is what Caleb Williams needs but doesn't want. I don't think he wants a coach like Mike Vrabel.
You know what this?
Caleb Williams would probably report Mike Vrabel for bullying to HR after a week with him.
Well, okay, think about this.
It's not going to be. It's not. This is not the style he's accustomed to.
Chad, imagine this, because you railed on this. Hard Knocks.
Yeah.
The purse.
Right.
In Vrabel's office, you think he's picking up a purse and leaving the room?
Not without Vrabel just mercilessly making fun of him.
Vrabel showed that in the team meeting room over and over again.
Yeah. You're going to get made fun of badly by Mike Vrabel if that's the case.
Yeah.
And the riding around on the sideline.
I know.
Just all of that is not a Mike Vrabel type of quarterback.
It also
now with Vrabel, you're going to be in need of hiring a really skilled offensive coordinator that can unlock the potential that Caleb Williams has. So he's not going to be completely overseeing the offensive side of the football.
Here's another tie.
But he is going to be the guy talking to the quarterback a lot as the head coach.
Here's another tie to Ohio State. When Matt LaFleur left the Titans and got the Green Bay Packers head coaching job, he was here for a year. Vrabel's offensive coordinator, who also interviewed for the Titans, they kept him around. He was the OC. John Robinson was like, "Hey, have you talked to Matt?" "No, I haven't." Let's get him in here. And the two hit it off. They're off and running. Before the replacement for LaFleur, which was Arthur Smith, who was on staff, before Smith was elevated up, the plan was Ryan Day was going to be the offensive coordinator for the Titans. Because Urban Meyer was there, you've got Ryan Day getting the job as head coach about 2 weeks before LaFleur got the job with the Packers.
Yeah.
So if LaFleur's interviewing, if he takes a job, you have a plan in place. Then Arthur Smith becomes OC. If Ryan Day is fired as head coach at Ohio State, well, he's got 60 million reasons why he doesn't have to work, right?
Mm-hmm.
But beyond that, would he go work for Vrabel in Illinois, in Chicago?
It's a good question. It would be an interesting choice for Ryan Day, given the buyout, and you could just wait and be a head coach next year somewhere. He's going to get a lot of job offers.
But if you're like
if Ohio State lets him go, does he want to go be an assistant?
Vrabel went and lived in Cleveland.
Yeah, but I think
you know what I'm saying?
His responsibility is pretty low with what he's doing in Cleveland.
Yeah,
but
he's still. You know what I'm saying though. Even
look,
with
it's
that,
possible.
he's still doing
I'm not
something.
saying that it wouldn't happen, but wouldn't that be something for Ohio State fans? They think they're going to get Mike Vrabel when they fire Ryan Day, and instead they fire Ryan Day and he leaves to go coach with Mike Vrabel in the NFL, and they don't land Vrabel.
Crazy, Chad. They could land Aaron Rodgers. Who knows? He
Yeah,
could be the OC if he's done with. He's out of the league.
I watched all 3 parts of Aaron Rodgers' Enigma on Netflix, 3-part docuseries, and I like Aaron Rodgers more after watching it than before I watched it. Now, it's impossible not to spend 3 hours with Aaron Rodgers and not listen to him talk and not have a few times where, at least a few, where you're saying, man, this guy's full of shit. He just is. Everything he's saying right now is just could sound wacko to you, could be anything, or he just sounds like he's full of shit, which sometimes may be the case with Aaron Rodgers. But there are also things you see about him, including ayahuasca trips, which he refers to as medicine trips, and he calls it taking the medicine. So they don't say ayahuasca, they say medicine when they go on these trips to Costa Rica, and we see him tripping on the medicine in the documentary. So if you're into that kind of thing, you'll definitely want to see those parts of it. He's a good dude, though. I don't know how you watch it and then come away from it thinking, man, this guy's just a bad person. You see him interact with certain people, and it's like, yeah, I can see where he's a very likable, kind guy. He doesn't get into details with the family estrangement. He does reference his parents a lot and how he was raised in a very conservative Christian household, and that sort of pushed him away from that. He references how his parents treated him as if he was soft. And the exact quote in it, he said, because I was raised and my parents thought I was weak and soft, I decided to be the toughest MFer on the planet. And that's how he talked about how he deals with injuries. And he talked about injury versus pain and talking to Navy SEALs about when you're holding a log in front of you, something he was doing, the feeling you have right now, that's pain. That's not an injury. But if I shot you in the foot, that's an injury. And how pain is temporary. The problem with the foot, you're going to have to get fixed. There's a lot to dive into in these 3 parts about his life and his career. Does not get into his various love interests, other than him saying that there was a time that he continues to associate with famous women, which he understands makes him look like a hypocrite when he talks about not always wanting to be in the public eye when he chooses his dating partners. It's my conclusion on it, Hut, is Aaron Rodgers is one of the most fascinating characters in the history of the NFL. Hands down, one of the most interesting. Divisive, polarizing, all of those things. Enigma, as it's titled. But you can't look away.
Well, and
it's a highly entertaining documentary. It is very entertaining to watch start to finish, and you're not going to look away. And when he's talking, there are things he's going to say that make you go, oh, well, that's interesting and makes some sense. And there's other things you're going to hear and say, this sounds like the wackiest hippie you've ever seen that's strung out on something, talking about
contradicts
the world.
himself some.
Contradicts himself a little bit.
Because he's going after Jordan for being on Bachelorette or Bachelor, right?
Yeah.
And then
he goes after
he's dating all these people.
Yeah, his big problem, well, he doesn't get into the exact reasons that he said it was a number of incidents that led to the falling out where he doesn't speak with his family. He also says, people say could there be a reconciliation? He said, absolutely. He said, I'm not closing the door on that. But one day that might happen. He said, we're just at a point in our separate lives where I'm not talking to them.
Right, yeah. Well, I mean,
again, that part is very
that's
weird.
Been a while,
I don't really know
all
of it. But the way he does get passionate about explaining, these are family issues that when I turn on the television and see my little brother who I was close to, and they put 2 chairs out that are empty at the family gathering when he brings the girl from the reality show home, and they make a big deal about it. And he says, and after I don't think he even mentions it by name, his little brother, Jordan, told him he was doing this to get famous. And he says on camera, he told me that before he went on the show. And then he wins the show. He said he's got a big problem with that. So, look, you can disagree with it, and I disagree with a lot of things that he says, but doesn't make him any less fascinating or entertaining in this docuseries.
Yeah, can you imagine?
Now, the whole COVID thing, they spent a lot of time on that year with the back and forth where he got COVID and had the 10 days away, and that's how they realized he really wasn't inoculated.
What about?
And it was a poor choice of words.
Because of the protocol or whatever.
Yeah.
What about
and he says, if I respond to people who say stuff about me, then, that he's sensitive. And Rodgers says, yeah, I am sensitive. He said, I'll admit it. If I hear something about me, I'm to the point now where I'm going to defend myself. But he's in a place now where a lot of it's just funny to him. He's like, I can have a sense of humor about the way people think about me, where he couldn't have that 2 years ago.
Maybe it's easy.
And he credits the medicine trips with a lot of this, that the visions he sees while on ayahuasca have helped him self-realize in some way.
Maybe it's easy for some. I would find it so difficult to just cut off your immediate family and not just talk to them, or communicate in any way. Like, just aside from the emotional aspect of it, just the day-to-day aspect of it.
Yeah, I don't
and the
get
connections
it either.
there. It would be tough.
Unless you told me that he was physically or sexually abused or something.
Right, but
that's the reason that you go through an estrangement. I don't.
But you're still talking to somebody in your family.
He's not giving any real reasons about. He said there were incidents in high school, in college, and post-college that eventually led to me not wanting to have any communication with them.
Yeah, I mean, I think about that often whenever he's brought up and we discuss who he's is dating or what he's doing with Iowa, and how I think about it when I see Jordan Rodgers on TV.
Yeah,
it's bizarre.
And the series is hyped as a look at his recovery from the Achilles injury.
Yeah,
which they do show a little bit, but it's very much in the backdrop.
What about the vice presidential option?
Yeah, no, the RFK's in the documentary. They have him talking on a mountain walk somewhere, and he says RFK Jr. after that walk you saw on camera asked me to be his vice president. And he talked about him mulling it over, and the trip to Egypt where he had the unexcused absence was a big part of it. I mean, it gets into all the controversies over the course of his career. A lot of stuff about Brett Favre. I thought another pretty cool thing about Aaron Rodgers, if you're looking for positives about the guy, if you don't like him, he took that Brett Favre situation, and he didn't say a lot of bad things about Favre, but he said, I just knew that I couldn't go to him with a lot of football stuff because he wasn't going to be willing to help me with that. But they became friendly because they became friends. He could joke about hunting trips. They could, laugh and have fun together, and it wasn't this terrible relationship the way people think. He also said when they drafted Jordan Love, while being pissed off about it, he decided to do the opposite thing that Brett Favre did to him. He said it's not Jordan Love's fault. And he welcomed him with open arms. Matt LaFleur is on camera and said he was great to Jordan Love. He went out of his way to mentor him and help him see things.
Just took it out of the Packers
on the field. Yeah, and he hated the Packers.
But that's typical in the league, though, from the business aspect. Chad, maybe I'm not going to be Debbie Downer here. Not trying to be. And I realize ratings are going to be massive. I can't wait for the college football playoff. Is it just me? Or does the hype not meet the expectation? I think Nashville is a great example of the common crazy collection of college football fans and just football fans in general, where you're passionate, you're happy, you're sad, you're angry, you're pissed off. And locally, there's more talk about the Titans, who are abysmal, than the Tennessee Volunteers who are in the college football playoff. I don't get it. I don't know if it's that way across the rest of the college football playoff landscape here, But you mentioned Christmas Eve over Christmas Day. I love discussing and previewing games and trying to figure out will they meet expectation and the what's going to come of this result versus another result. I don't hear any of that. And these games are on campus. Tickets, looking at some of the ticket prices, you can get in. This was as of yesterday when they sent this to me. $108 for the Clemson-Texas game in Austin? What? Tennessee, right now, Tennessee, Ohio State, $129 is one that was sent to me to purchase. SMU, $60. And Happy Valley, what? And I know you're going to have to travel a lot if you're a fan because there's more games to attend. But this is on campus. This is different. Are you noticing this?
Yeah, I wish that every fan base treated this thing the way Tennessee fans have treated it, because that was the level of passion I was expecting. Trey Wallace has a story up. 42% or 42%, I think it is, of the tickets purchased have come from the state of Tennessee for the Tennessee-Ohio State game. Now, I don't know what it's going to actually look like when you get to the game, but if it's 40% Tennessee fans, that is insane. Tennessee fans are hacking online jukebox systems to play Rocky Top over and over at sports bars around the Horseshoe all week leading up to the game. I mean, that's the level of interest and fandom I wanted to see with this playoff. And look, Tennessee fans, we understand this. They're a different breed. I think the rest of America is going to start to understand this also, and Ohio State fans are definitely going to understand this. It's a different level with Tennessee fans. Well, ask Greg Schiano about the different level of Tennessee fandom. It's a different
Fonzo Martin.
It's a different place, and it's a different level of passion with the fans. But I want to see that from everyone. And we're not in, these specific markets where the games are happening. I think the television ratings are going to be gigantic.
Yes.
And people are going to tune in all weekend for them. But I think what you're talking about, locally is just some bad editorial decisions, quite frankly. I don't know why that people would be doing that this week if you have a sports talk show in the state of Tennessee.
Yeah, I mean that's across the board, though.
Yeah.
But it's beyond just the fan base is traveling to the games this week. Indiana and Notre Dame is about what I would expect, $390. But SMU Penn State, $60. I'm not even looking at the SMU aspect of it. Penn State, let's go. $60. And you can get on the home playoff games and see empty seats available.
Yeah.
It's crazy. I don't know. I expected more.
That's a real bad sign for future games down the road in this playoff on neutral sites.
These sites are going to be packed. The games are going to be packed.
I mean, we'll see. I don't know. I was talking to someone with a bowl, and I was thinking, if you get Nebraska is a good example. Like getting a hungry Nebraska team, and you could get close to selling out the game. And the person said, "No way. No bowl games are selling out anymore. We're past the time
the
bowl games will ever sell out."
Well, you're saying next week. Future weeks. I see what you're saying.
I'm saying
not
future weeks when they go to the bowl sites.
I got you. Yeah.
If people are not buying up the tickets quickly,
Atlanta,
and selling out
before you
for
get
their
to
home
Atlanta.
playoff game,
right.
then I don't think they're going to be traveling to go further down the road.
Well, and then if you're traveling, are you traveling back-to-back weeks? Are you going from California to Texas? To the two bowl games? You're right.
Well, Tennessee's a good example. If you're a Tennessee fan, if you're one of the 40,000 possibly that are going to be inside of Ohio Stadium, are you going to drive up to Columbus,
right?
Pay for that ticket, pay for that night, and then 10 days later, 11 days later, turn around on New Year's Day and go to the Rose Bowl to watch the team play? Or I mean, it's kind of like NIL. This is not monopoly money we're talking about here. You got to make choices at some point. And the people that are going to be going, I'm sure a lot of them have Christmas time expenses. They're going to be paying also.
What about player families too? That's another thing.
It's great for television.
It is.
It's a made-for-TV event. Watching the cold weather and the snow this weekend is going to be awesome while I'm sitting in my heated living room watching the game. So it's a made-for-television event. TV's what matters more than anything. They're going to get the bang for their buck on television because the ratings are going to be gigantic. And I don't know the true appetite for ticket sales moving forward for a lot of these places.
Especially for the home games, yeah.
And the crowds are going to look good at these games, even if the prices aren't huge.
This weekend will be
the most
awesome.
expensive is Notre Dame that I've seen.
Yeah, that's it.
Consistently, the Notre Dame tickets
by
are
far
high.
Great for television. We'll see the NFL go head-to-head with college football playoff on Saturday against TNT. Great for television also for the WNBA was Caitlin Clark. But even crazy George Karl, Chad, it's not Caitlin Clark that he's saying could play the NBA or against men. As good as Caitlin Clark is, I'm thinking JuJu Watkins, maybe even better. She looks to have the size, athleticism, and talent to even compete in the NBA at some level. The size, athleticism, and talent to even compete in the NBA at some level. Look, JuJu Watkins would destroy me one-on-one.
Oh, me too.
But the NBA, Chad, you have two examples of what it's like to just randomly have to go either to a layup line or to a scrimmage from your college days, right? How did that go?
Not well for the women involved. This is just this is a scientific fact.
He's being
I will say this anytime this story comes up, and George Karl has to know better. George Karl clearly has not been around many instances of men playing sports against women or basketball. There's a reason that top-level programs oftentimes, Pat Summitt did this, would bring in men to practice against the women. And these are not college-level player men. These are a bunch of guys who played high school basketball that come in and scrimmage against their teams. I did this once in an internship in college at Tennessee where one of my tasks were to find 4 buddies that could play basketball, and we would go and scrimmage a professional women's team. Becky Hammond was a part of this team, who's now a great coach and was a great WNBA player. All these women also played WNBA, and they were playing in the offseason in this league for this team that I would practice against. We beat them regularly, and we were, half drunk, out of shape frat boys that weren't playing high-level college basketball. We were good high school basketball players that were not that far removed from playing high school basketball, and we would beat them. We would beat them while playing with a women's ball that we were unfamiliar with. So if anyone thinks that JuJu Watkins, who's a fantastic player, or Caitlin Clark or anyone, could play in the NBA, much less against good college players, you're crazy. You're not living in reality.
It's what we said whenever Ice Cube apparently offered Caitlin Clark, $5 million to play in the Big Three.
Yeah.
And then
which is a great publicity stunt.
Right. Because we went through the lineups, and there wasn't a player in the Big Three under 6'7" on one of the lineups. Corey Maggette, for instance, is the MVP of that league.
Did they not? Again, I'm a feminist when it comes to I want men and women treated the same way in sports. Why don't they list weights for women? Is this really like a female thing that you can't have your weight listed? I've looked for JuJu Watkins' height and weight. They give her height, but none of the players for USC have a weight listed. And I'm going to men's rosters, and I'm finding height and weight. JuJu Watkins is 6'2", okay? I'm trying to find her weight because the comparison here that I was trying to draw is I searched Steve Nash, height and weight. Steve Nash, not exactly known as an athletic titan on the court when you saw him playing. Steve Nash is 6'3", 178 pounds. Okay, an inch taller. So JuJu Watkins would need to be a Steve Nash type. And I guarantee you she doesn't weigh 178 pounds.
I'm thinking
is my guess. She weighs less.
Let's tie in George Karl. Let's go back to the Supersonics days.
But I can't find her weight.
I
think it's sexist to not include weights of women on athletic pages. Treat everyone the same in sports. List their weights.
Gary Payton, I know, was over 6'2", because I've stood next to him at some point. But he's taller than Chad even, I believe.
Yeah, I think he's
6'4",
listed at
6'5"?
6'3" or 6'4".
Okay.
I want to say. But let me check. He's 6'4".
Okay. Detlef Schrempf. Let's go through this.
Well, Detlef Schrempf's like 6'11".
Sean Kemp. Let's just start mentioning players that George Karl, back in the day, I'm not even going to go to the Easy Nuggets rosters, would be coaching. Come on. He's tweeting this out. George Karl.
It's crazy. John Stockton is about the same height as JuJu Watkins. 6'1". Little John Stockton. Little John Stockton.
Little Stock.
But that's, I mean,
Little John.
John Stockton is a tall
John.
man for Earth. He's tiny for the NBA.
Yes.
But 6'1", like, oh, that's a strapping, tall fella.
Okay.
If John Stockton walked in this room right now, we'd all be like, damn, that's a good-looking, tall, strapping guy. He is 6'1", and he's one of the smallest guys in the NBA.
What do you say? He's
but George Karl thinks that JuJu Watkins could play in the NBA.
He's normal.
He can't believe this.
No, what did you say? How do you describe him? Tiny for the NBA, but
normal for Earth. But he's tall for Earth.
How would you describe Spud Webb then?
Well above average. He's tiny for all of it. Tiny for the NBA and small for Earth.
Yes, but
actually probably average.
But would dominate the WNBA. And the dunk contest.
Oh my gosh, it would
now imagine Spud Webb with the women's basketball.
It'd be gross. It's what Spud Webb could do in the WNBA.
Little John Stockton.
Little John Stockton.